Good morning and welcome to Beyond the Binary. I'm Benny.
I'm Aaron.
And welcome back. We're happy to be in our second week now.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. I think I want to start off with this interesting bit of news that's out there right now, and that pertains to our Tumblr account, which is btb.tumblr.com, and Tumblr was just bought out by Yahoo News yesterday.
Yes.
For some, I don't know, a huge amount, $1.2 billion or
yeah,
something like that. And so we're speculating at this point, but Aaron and I are wondering about
what's going to happen of Tumblr. You know, what's going to happen to Tumblr?
Yeah, particularly trans sites, different types of body positive sites that might have new censorship rules imposed based on Yahoo standards. And I don't know what those Yahoo standards are, but Tumblr is certainly not something that I see flowing freely through the Yahoo world.
You know, it's really good for, of course, the man who created Tumblr, the young guy who created it. But it's so unfortunate when this kind of thing happens to popular online websites. They sort of lose their charm in a way.
Yeah.
Like what happened with YouTube. You know, like just the media took over places like YouTube. Yeah, it's just kind of unfortunate. So we'll see how this goes.
Yes. But nonetheless, we do have our Facebook and our Gmail account still up, and we're going to be running with those. Facebook.com/BeyondTheBinary. And our email is bthebradio@gmail.com.
Where we report transgender news.
Yes, and on top of that, we've also had quite a few people already emailing, messaging us, various artists from all over interested in participating in the show. So we're really looking forward and excited about that. So we're going to continue to mention this. So if you yourself are trans-identified, queer-identified, musician, artist, visual artist, however you define art in some interesting way, and are interested in being interviewed and showcasing your work here and then also through our Facebook, please just contact us. We'd be happy to do so. We find that that's the art culture component of our show is a very important part. So today, we sort of have these three broad topics that we want to really touch on. And the first one is this notion I am falling in love with lately. I just can't seem to get it out of my head. It's this idea of visual activism. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. After that, we're going to turn into some more or less dreary news, but some real news that deals with the murder of trans people.
Yeah,
some recent findings.
Right,
and
definitely unfortunate
yeah.
news.
And then our final point is CeCe McDonald, who just turned 25 years old. Her birthday just passed. And so we're going to talk about CeCe McDonald for just a moment today. And for those of you who are not aware of who CeCe is, hopefully you will know a little bit more today. So that being said, let's get started. What do you say, Ari?
Yeah, definitely. How about we, do you have that quote with you of
the visual activism?
Yeah, because Benny sent me that quote, really excited about this whole idea that Benny was coming up with.
Well, it kind of connects to these two ideas, I guess, two quotations tied into one. And the first one was stated by the late, she's now passed, the late disabilities rights activist and lawyer, Harriet McBride Johnson. And she was quoted saying, "It's not that I'm ugly, it's more that most people don't know how to look at me."
Right.
And I'm just going to say it one more time, because it took me a minute for that to really sink in.
It took me a minute as well.
It's not that I'm ugly, it's more that most people don't know how to look at me.
Right.
So what does that mean to you, do you suppose, when I first said that to you?
It's kind of like this. It's a beautiful quote. I think it could pertain to many bodies in many ways. You know, just people seeing what, I don't know, just it's so hard to explain, but for me it's more of like, I would like people to see me how I feel, right, as a trans person, how I feel.
Sure.
Instead I get kind of read by shock value. People aren't really actually looking at me, right, how I see myself.
Sure. And
how you see me, you know.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know, my mind is still just so blown by this, because every time I'm being stared at, or even when I'm staring at other people, it makes me think, am I staring at the person, quote, the right way, or a way that's wrong? Which brings us to this notion of visual activism, which is an idea that was brought forward by a professor of women's studies and literary studies. Her name is Rosemary Garland Thompson, and she's written quite a bit in disability studies as well. This is where I've come across most of her work, disability studies work. And visual activism, according to Rosemary Garland Thompson, can be broken down essentially in this one way. It's a cognitive, a personal rewiring or rethinking or reapproaching the whole politics of staring. And so instead of saying stop staring or don't stare at me, right, which tends to be my impulse, it's stop staring, I'm tired of being stared at.
Right.
She says that we need to learn to start finding ways to say look at me. And to take control of it. And just like what you were saying with the first comment was that some people just don't see you the way that you see yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of visual activism is trying to find ways, and this is of course not easy. I don't want to put that out there in the world and say you're doing it wrong because you're just not engaging in visual activism. That's not what I think this is.
Right, definitely.
I think that, I don't know, like what does it mean to you, Ari? My mind is just blown away by this whole idea. I don't know about anyone else out there. Maybe everyone else thinks that this is just a waste of time. I don't know. But for me, and I brought this up with Aaron, whenever you've had particularly rough times, for instance, I've said it, and it seems to revitalize you a little bit.
It does sort of ease some feelings, some troubled feelings that I have when people are staring at me, or when people, just avoid me in certain ways. It just it's just kind of a comforting space that I can enter, where I know that there is a proper way to look at me, and that people are just not being able to do that yet.
Yeah.
And dealing with my own, I'm also kind of still new to looking at trans people.
Sure.
And I'm always learning how to look at trans people, and it's always fascinating, once you actually start seeing trans people for who they are, and not just,
or
everything that they're kind of going against as far as gender.
Or
roles
even just
go.
the notion that maybe, just maybe, we don't know how to look at other people on their own terms. Like, what does it mean for me to say, you're looking at me wrong?
Right.
Your focus is off. This is the lens I want you to see me with. This is the way I want you to see me. Right? I think that this notion of visual activism, it certainly deserves a lot more attention. And I intend to give it a lot more attention, or at least to think through this a bit more and to really try to embody it more. It, I think, asks not just for me, the person being stared at, or what Rosemary Garland Thompson calls the stare-e versus the starer. It's not just that the stare-e is responsible for saying, here's the lens, but it also asks that the starer start really, I think, consciously ask themselves, is my the impulsive or the immediate impulse, maybe it's to pull away or go, ooh, maybe that impulse is more a reflection of me because I don't know how to see the person on their own terms.
See, that's exactly what I'm thinking of, is that it's kind of this larger spectrum, of ideas where it's not only just about certain bodies that, that may be trans or whatever. It could just come down to perception in general, and how we're sort of judging people in a way, and not really understanding their day, or not really considering them and what they might be going through, or what have you. I mean, it just ties into so many ideas, and I think that's definitely one that I think a lot more people can relate to.
Yeah. Well, I think that as we move forward, this is an interesting transition to bring us into the next article on Gay Star News.